One day, 31 years ago, I was a 3-year-old boy and I received a toy as a gift. The toy looked like this. And it sounded like this. Cute, isn't it? I used to play jingle melodies on those toys when I was a 3-year-old kid, whatever I heard on TV. But I had this gift of visualization. I hadn't seen a toy piano until that point, and I haven't seen a piano at all at that point. So what I noticed in this piano was that it had missing notes, that it didn't have all the notes that were supposed to be on music, just by hearing it. So I kind of visualized how a real piano would look like. And then after some years, when I was about 7, my mother gifted me this. Now, this was a real piano. And up to that point, the only place where I'd seen a piano was in the Tom and Jerry show, where Tom plays the piano like this. And of course, in that cartoon, Jerry takes all the credits for pianos, for Tom's tired piano playing. That's a very famous cartoon. And I saw this. This was kind of similar to how I had visualized a toy piano would look like at that point. So I was able to play this without making the adjustments on the toy piano, where I had to make a little bit of compromises here and there to play jingles. And of course, when I had used the toy piano, I had shifted the notes to play jingles that were not playable on the toy piano, like this. For example, this was the toy piano, the previous slide. I'll play 2 of the popular jingles which I had played at that point. Anyone born in the 80s, who lived in the 80s, can you recognize this one? The next one I'm going to play was not playable on this, but I had to take 2 as the new one, and I had to play it. So 2 becomes 1, 3 becomes 2, 4 becomes 3, and so on. And this jingle became playable. And I did this when I was 3, 4 years old. So my parents saw that I had this talent and that I could play the same jingles on these without making those adjustments. So they put me out to a music teacher when I was 7, 8 years old, somewhere. So he saw that I looked at the world a little bit differently because I recognized everything as numbers and patterns, and I was very scientifically inclined, and I understood math a little better than some of the other students. So since I looked at everything as numbers and patterns, he taught me the very basics of Western music, which is Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti. And he also taught me the basics of Carnatic music, the 72 ragas, how they were aligned and stuff like that, because I understood 72 at that point as 6 types of sarega, multiplied by 6 types of padani, multiplied by 2 types of ma. So 6 into 6 into 2 is 72. That was how I understood music at that point. I had this gift of visualization, which I told you, which made me play a piano before I even saw a piano. And moving forward, I joined this band. He had an orchestra, and I started playing in it when I was 9 years old. And that's when my music career started. This was me, the yellow arrow pointing at me, and the blue arrow points to my music teacher, Mr. Selvaraj Kumar. He was instrumental in grooming me the way I am today. And I think if I had made the right start in my career, I think the credit has to go to this gentleman here. Since I told you I was very scientifically inclined, I learned my music from this by playing in this orchestra, and I learned my science by reading these books. Children's Knowledge Bank. Whatever knowledge of science and technology I picked up in my life was only by reading these 6 books. So, which means I had no exposure to the internet. It was the 90s, early 90s. And when I was in my 11th standard, I appeared for this National Astronomy Olympiad. And what happened was I cleared it. And I didn't know how I cleared it. But I went there and figured that I had done pretty well in the contest. I realized that my visualization was what enabled me to actually write an examination as to how a universe would function and how physics worked, because this was all I had referred to until that point. I had no background in physics whatsoever. So I joined college after that. I did my computer engineering. That's when my music career again took a new turn. Started performing with some legendary musicians. This is with Vijay Prakash, this is with Mr. Ilayaraja, with Mr. A.R. Rahman. I did some very interesting concerts with those people. And it was a new kind of learning for me. I learned a lot of music. I learned by playing with these legends as to how they performed, how performances happened, and so many other things about music. I went on to score for a couple of movies in Malayalam and a movie in Telugu, which did well. But I always had that yearning to mix my scientific knowledge, whatever I gained, with whatever music I had learned up to that point, by playing, of course. And I wasn't a singer. I couldn't express myself through classical music because classical musicians were who I was predominantly playing with. I had done about 2,000 fusion shows with legendary artists at that point, playing the keyboard, backing them. But I always yearned for a real instrument, a real expressive instrument where I could put my scientific and technological brain into it and just play it musically and be very expressive in playing classical music and other forms of music as well. And then I chanced upon this one. This is a third generation iPad, and this photo was clicked by an ink fellow, Vandana Srinivasan, when we met some 6 years ago in a coffee shop. I showed her this, and she thought, wow, this is so interesting, and I must click a picture of this. This app that you see here is called Animoog, which is made by Moog Music. And Moog Music is a huge synthesizer giant. When I saw this app, what I realized was the fact that it is not similar to a keyboard. Again, it was like the toy piano, which was not similar to a keyboard. This wasn't similar to a keyboard, but that threw me challenges. How do I play it? So I started fiddling around with it, and I discovered that it was so expressive that I could actually play classical music on it, Indian classical music. So I started using it in my concerts, and people were fascinated. People were, you find the word, I don't know. People thought of interesting things about it, but a lot of people thought, looking at me doing this, that I was browsing Facebook. Of course, a lot of you might still think I'm playing Facebook on that. But what happened was I tried to do some jugalbandi or question answer sessions with the main artists, and a lot of artists who were playing with cooperated, and we ended up doing a lot of jams on stage, and that was how people got to know that this thing was happening, and there was someone playing Indian classical music on the iPad. This was 2012. From then on, I started playing it in my concerts. This is a video of me playing it in Carnatic style with a traditional Mridangam and Kanchira accompaniment. This was a video I did in 2015 after I had done quite some performances on the iPad. This video was up on YouTube, and something very interesting happened. Mr. A.R. Rahman shared my video on his social media. He loved the video, and he shared my video on social media. And from then on, this concept kind of took on, and it kind of generated a lot of interest in this concept, and a lot of other iPad musicians also started coming up in the world who came up with interesting things, interesting acts on the iPad as well. I got to do another thing, which is to do the first ever Carnatic classical music concert on the iPad, which was recognized by Limca Book of Records, and I have a national record for the first ever classical music concert played on an iPad. Thank you. And the thing is, there are two things happening simultaneously at this point. One is the fact that I was growing musically in my career. The other thing, of course, is the fact that people were using devices in a very negative manner by that point. People were actually using you to take selfies or ignore the person next to them, which is actually a Google word, which is actually an English word that Google recognizes, by the way. It's called fubbing. which means ignoring the person next to you in favor of your mobile device. Yeah, it's a funny thing to see it on Google, but it's a sad thing for us these days, right? Because I started my journey on a toy piano, a similar gadget, if not as sophisticated as the iPad was, but it was a pretty good gadget at the point. And I used it to further myself in my music career, in my science career, and I thought that played an important role in what I was doing. But after that, I had this idea, maybe I should take it further and use it very seriously in my music. And I started doing iPad music production. I started doing sessions and seminars on how iPad is used for music production. I used to call it idea to iTunes. Because you get an idea, you put it on an iPad, you do the entire processing on your iPad, and until you upload it to iTunes, the track doesn't leave the iPad. Now, do you remember the other Tom and Jerry cartoon where Jerry used to draw a hole in a wall, and he used to turn into a real hole. Jerry used to run into it, and Tom will run after Jerry, he'll bang into the wall, and he'll have a huge bump on his head. Do you remember the cartoon? Yes. So what that told us in 1960 was the fact that the virtual world of drawing can interact with the real world of the wall. To me now, the real world is music. The virtual world is the iPad and the elements on the iPad. So now, I'm going to be using this concept to show you something very interesting. So that is basically me converting the sound of a table, just me hitting on the table, to something that's more musical, using the iPad as an interface. That's the closest we have got to the interaction between a real world and a virtual world, right? Of me tapping on the table and a virtual world of it converting and processing into something musical. Now let's hear a couple of performances that I'm going to do on the iPad. First, I want to start with a small improvisation of me doing a very small act. It's just what I feel like playing right now. Let's hear some of it. Thank you. So I'm going to play this lovely piece composed by none other than Mr. A.R. Rahman, who is also responsible for my career, for what I am right now, because of his share. So this is a beautiful piece, one of very close to my heart. It's the Bombay theme for you guys. Thank you.